Las Vegas in 1970 wasn't just a city, it was a mood, a machine, a bright, noisy illusion sitting on top of real tension, money, ego, reputation, and the kind of quiet danger that doesn't announce itself. And at the center of that world, Frank Sinatra wasn't simply a singer, he was territory. The Sands Hotel wasn't just where he performed, it was where he ruled. 2 shows a night, packed rooms, names on the guest list that carried weight in every corner of America. Politicians, film stars, high rollers, guys who didn't need introductions because their presence was the introduction. Backstage at a Sinatra show had its own air. Cigarette smoke, cologne, expensive laughter, security that didn't look nervous because nervous people didn't last in that hallway. And that's where this story begins. Not on a stage, not in a ring, not in a dojo, but in a restricted corridor behind velvet curtains where reputations were protected like cash. Because Sinatra, at this time, wasn't just dealing with fans, he was dealing with threats. Not the crazy letter type of threats, the kind that made his security team stop smiling, the kind that made people double-check doors and watch hands, not faces, the kind where you don't ask too many questions because you already know the answer. Sinatra had protection, of course, he always did, but the man in charge of that protection was the real wall between Sinatra and the outside world. They called him Big Anthony, and the nickname wasn't cute. This guy was enormous, well over 300 pounds, an ex-boxer type, shoulders like a doorway, hands like bricks, the kind of man who didn't need to threaten you because his body did the threatening for him. Standing near him felt like standing too close to a parked truck. In security work, presence is a weapon, and Big Anthony was built like a weapon. He handled everything. Drunks who got brave, gamblers who got angry, backstage wannabes who wouldn't take no seriously. He wasn't fast like a martial artist. He didn't need to be. His job was simple. Make problems disappear before Sinatra even heard about them. And his philosophy was even simpler. Size wins. Not always in a movie, not always in a fantasy, but in real life, in a crowded hallway, in a sudden grab, in a messy scuffle where nobody plays fair, Big Anthony believed the world belonged to the heavier man. And most of the time, he was right, because most people had never met anyone who could rewrite that math. Then, someone brought up a name Sinatra had been hearing more and more.
Bruce Lee. At the time, Bruce wasn't the global myth yet. Not the poster, not the forever legend. He was the rising storm, the man Hollywood talked about like a rumor that kept becoming true. Fast hands, sharp mind, real skill, not just choreography. Somebody in Sinatra's circle floated the idea like a solution. Frank, if you want someone who understands personal protection, real combat, talk to Bruce Lee. Sinatra was curious. He didn't trust hype, but he respected results. He'd seen enough big-talk people in show business to recognize when someone was selling smoke. So the idea wasn't to hire Bruce because he looked cool. The idea was to meet him, to test him, to see if the stories held up in a room where there's no camera and no mercy for embarrassment. So Bruce is invited backstage between shows. And here's the thing. Bruce walks into this world without trying to dominate it. No loud entrance, no performance, no look at me. Just a calm man stepping into a space full of powerful personalities and professional predators, like he belongs there, because in his mind, he does. Sinatra greets him, polite but direct. The Rat Pack energy is there too. Dean Martin relaxed like he owns the universe. Sammy Davis Jr. curious and buzzing. People watching with half smiles. And then there's Big Anthony, standing off to the side, silent, evaluating. Security people have a talent. They can read you without speaking. They don't care about your fame. They care about what happens when the room gets ugly. And when Big Anthony looks at Bruce, what he sees doesn't match his entire worldview. Because Bruce isn't a giant. Bruce is lean, compact, the kind of build that looks athletic, sure, but not intimidating in the way a heavyweight is intimidating. Big Anthony's brain does what it always does. It runs the numbers, and the numbers say, this guy is small. Sinatra chats with Bruce for a moment, why he's here, what he teaches, what he understands about real threats. Bruce speaks plainly, no mystical talk, no fake humble act, just a calm confidence that feels different. Sinatra turns his head slightly, the way powerful people do when they want the truth from their own guy. Anthony, what do you think? And now the room shifts because everybody can feel what's coming. Big Anthony doesn't insult Bruce with profanity. He doesn't need to. His disrespect is cleaner than that. He says it like a professional. Frank, with respect, you want protection. You need presence. Size is what stops problems before they start. This man is talented, sure, but he's light. A real threat grabs him, crushes him, throws him. That's reality. It lands hard because it's not emotional. It's logical. And Big Anthony is used to logic winning. Bruce doesn't react like an offended actor. He reacts like a man who's heard this his entire life. He simply says something that sounds almost too calm for the moment. Size matters, but it isn't everything. That's all. Not a speech, not a lecture, just a quiet contradiction. Big Anthony smiles because to him that sentence is adorable. He leans into it. You're telling me technique beats weight? I've done this for decades. I've seen men panic when things get physical. If I grab you, what then? The room gets quieter. Dean is watching like it's better than the show. Sammy's eyes widen because he can sense the tension turning into entertainment.
Sinatra is studying Bruce's face, not for fear, but for ego. Because ego is what gets people hurt. Bruce answers with something even more dangerous than confidence. He doesn't brag. He talks about leverage, timing, balance, human weaknesses that don't care how big you are. He makes it sound like physics, because to him, fighting is physics. And Big Anthony hears physics and thinks, fine, then prove it. Sinatra doesn't order violence. He frames it as evaluation. Not a brawl, not a beatdown, a test, something controlled, something that answers the question in the simplest language possible. What happens if a mountain grabs a blade? Sinatra looks at Bruce. Are you okay with the demonstration? Bruce nods. No fear, no theatrics, just yes. And that's when Big Anthony hesitates. Not because he's scared of Bruce, but because he understands optics. If he hurts this small guy, he looks like a bully. If he loses to this small guy, he looks like a joke. But Sinatra is watching, and in Sinatra's world, when the boss wants an answer, you don't stall. Big Anthony removes his jacket like a professional getting ready for work. He squares his shoulders, rolls his neck, old boxer habits, like his body remembers every fight it ever won. The people in the room shift into a loose circle without realizing it, like instinct, like the air itself is making space. Bruce takes one step forward, not into a fighting stance that screams martial artist, into something quieter, something that doesn't look impressive until you realize it's not meant to look impressive, it's meant to work. And right before it begins, when the room is hanging on that thin wire between this is a joke and something serious is about to happen, Sinatra says the line that turns a legend into a moment. All right, show me.
For the first 2 seconds, nothing happened. That's what everyone remembers first, how normal it looked. Big Anthony stood there like a wall that had decided to become a person. His feet were planted wide, not because he was trained in martial arts, but because his entire life had taught him one rule: don't get moved. Bruce stood across from him and somehow looked smaller than he actually was. Not weak, just quiet, like he didn't need to advertise anything. People expected one of two scenes. Either the little kung fu guy does a flashy movie move, or the 350-pound bodyguard grabs him and ends it in one ugly second. Nobody in that room was expecting the third option. Sinatra didn't want to fight. He wanted an answer. So the demo starts like this. Big Anthony reaches, not slow, not hesitant, just a big hand coming forward like a clamp. And here's the first mistake everyone makes when they imagine this. They imagine Bruce trying to stop the hand, like a block, like resistance. But Bruce doesn't fight the hand. He fights what the hand is connected to. The moment Big Anthony commits his weight forward, Bruce's body shifts, barely a step, more like a change in angle, like turning a key in a lock. Big Anthony's fingers touch fabric, and then something happens that makes the entire room lean forward without realizing it. Bruce isn't where he was, not in a dramatic teleport way, in a how did that happen so fast way. It's subtle, like watching someone pull a chair away at the last second. The person doesn't fall because the chair is gone. They fall because they committed their weight to something that wasn't there anymore. Big Anthony tries again, more aggressively. Now it's not just a hand, it's a shove, a grab, a let me end this surge. And Bruce gives him exactly what a big man hates most. Nothing solid, no resistance, no anchor, no object to crush. Because when you're built like Big Anthony, your confidence comes from contact. If you can touch it, you can control it. If you can wrap it, you can dominate it. Bruce keeps refusing contact in the way Big Anthony wants it. The room starts murmuring, not with cheering, but with confusion. Dean Martin's face changes first. The half-smile becomes a real look. Sammy's eyes get sharper, like he's watching a magic trick that might not be a trick. Sinatra stays still. He's not amused yet. He's measuring. Big Anthony gets annoyed. You can feel it. Not rage, not violence. That specific irritation of a man who's used to things being simple. He steps in harder. This time he goes for a full body grab, the kind that ends arguments. He tries to wrap Bruce and compress him, the way a bear compresses something small. And Bruce lets him come. That's the second thing nobody expects. Bruce doesn't run. He doesn't bounce around the room. He doesn't dance away. He allows the space to close, just enough. Then he turns his body like a door on a hinge, not away, through. And suddenly Big Anthony's arms are wrapping air again, but now his own momentum is dragging him past center. Bruce touches him, not with a punch, not with a strike that looks dramatic, more like placing a hand where it needs to be, a shoulder, an elbow, a point of balance, and Big Anthony stumbles. Not a little stumble, a real stumble, the kind where a big man has to take 2 heavy steps to catch himself. The room makes a sound. That sound matters more than yelling, because it's the sound of people realizing this isn't theater.
Big Anthony straightens up fast, embarrassed, and tries to laugh it off. But his laugh isn't clean. It has doubt inside it. He resets his stance, wider now, lower. He's adapting. And Bruce, this is where the myth starts to feel real. Bruce looks like he hasn't even started yet. Sinatra speaks calmly. Again. Big Anthony goes in, and now he changes tactics. He isn't trying to chase, he's trying to trap. He feints a grab, then shoots the other hand, trying to catch Bruce's arm, trying to create contact and lock the situation down. For 1 second, it looks like he might get it. His fingers hook Bruce's sleeve. That's all Big Anthony needs, he thinks. Because if you control one limb, you control the man. He yanks, and Bruce goes with it. That's the third mistake big men don't understand. Sometimes pulling is what the smaller man wants. Because now Big Anthony is committed again, and when a heavy body commits, it becomes predictable for a fraction of a second. Bruce's foot steps in, not back, in. He doesn't fight strength with strength, he interrupts structure. He angles Big Anthony's shoulder slightly offline while shifting his own hips like he's cutting across a current. Then he gives a short, sharp push, not a shove, not a strike, more like a command delivered through the body. Big Anthony's balance breaks. It doesn't look like a movie throw. It looks worse. It looks real. His feet tangle. His weight moves where he doesn't want it to move. His upper body tilts. His hands flail for something stable. And for the first time, Big Anthony's face flashes something people almost never see on him. Panic. Not fear of pain, fear of falling. Because big men don't fear punches as much as they fear losing control of gravity. Big Anthony drops to one knee. A knee in a room where he's never been lower than anyone. The silence hits like a punch.
You can hear someone inhale. You can hear a glass clink somewhere, like it's suddenly too loud. And Bruce doesn't celebrate. He doesn't smirk. He just steps back and gives the space back to Big Anthony like a respectful professional. That's what makes it colder. That's what makes it feel like a demonstration instead of a fight. Big Anthony stands up fast, red in the face. He wants to fix the image immediately, so he does the only thing he can do. He goes all in. No more testing, no more trying to look controlled. He charges. A 350-pound man charging in a hallway-sized backstage space is not a joke. It's a disaster on legs. If he hits you, you don't get hurt, you get moved. The circle tightens. Someone instinctively steps back, because now people are thinking, okay, now the little guy gets crushed. Bruce doesn't run. He doesn't stiffen. He waits. And that waiting is the most terrifying part, because it looks like surrender to anyone who doesn't understand timing. Big Anthony closes the distance, and right as he commits, right as his weight becomes unstoppable, Bruce shifts again. A half step, an angle, a turn, and Big Anthony goes past him like a train missing the platform. Bruce's hand touches him once more, guiding him into the emptiness he created. Big Anthony slams into the wall or stumbles into furniture, depending on which version you hear. But the point is the same. He hits something that isn't Bruce, and the room erupts, not with cheering, but with the kind of shocked laughter you get when the world breaks its own rules in front of you.
Sinatra doesn't laugh loud. He smiles slowly. That slow smile is a verdict, because Sinatra has seen confident men bluff their way through life, and he has seen real professionals. Bruce just separated the two without raising his voice. Big Anthony stands there, breathing hard, dignity damaged, trying to understand how he got outplayed without being fought. And Bruce finally says the line that lands like a quiet hammer. You're strong, but strength needs balance, and balance has angles. He isn't insulting him. He's explaining him, and that might be the most humiliating thing of all, because it means Bruce didn't win with anger, he won with understanding. And in that room, with Sinatra watching, that kind of understanding is more valuable than muscle.
After the stumble, after the wall impact, after the room's laughter died down, something heavier replaced it. Respect. Not the polite Hollywood respect people fake for cameras. Real respect. The kind that shows up when a man watches another man control danger without needing to look dangerous. Big Anthony stood there, chest rising and falling, trying to swallow the moment. He wasn't injured. That wasn't the point. The point was worse. He had been managed, like a problem, like a moving object whose direction could be edited, and he hated that feeling. But he also couldn't deny it, because in that backstage circle, everyone had just seen the same impossible thing. A man half his size had turned his greatest advantage into a weakness. Sinatra took 2 steps forward, not fast, not excited, just calm, the way a boss moves when he's about to make something official. He looked at Big Anthony first, and you could tell he wasn't angry. Sinatra wasn't the type to humiliate his people in front of others if they were loyal, but he also wasn't the type to ignore reality just to protect someone's ego. So he asked a question that sounded simple but carried authority. "Anthony, you good?" Big Anthony nodded quickly. Yeah, Frank." But his voice had shifted. Before, Big Anthony's voice sounded like certainty. Now it sounded like a man trying to rebuild certainty out of thin air. Sinatra then turned to Bruce, and this is where the story changes from demo to decision, because Sinatra's next words weren't about entertainment, they were about control. "You said size matters, but it isn't everything." Bruce nodded. Sinatra held eye contact longer than most people would. He was reading Bruce's personality, because skill is valuable, but personality is the lock that decides how that skill gets used. A violent man with skill is a liability. A calm man with skill is an asset. Bruce didn't posture. He didn't try to sell himself. He didn't even look proud. He looked like this was normal, like physics always works the same way, even in a casino backstage hallway. And that calmness, the lack of hunger for applause, was probably what impressed Sinatra most. Because in Sinatra's world, the most dangerous people weren't the loud ones, they were the quiet ones. Sinatra asked something else now, something practical. What happens if someone's got a knife? The room tightened again, because now we're not talking about a controlled demo, we're talking about real threats. This is where people expected Bruce to do a martial arts speech or to say something mystical. But Bruce didn't do that. He spoke like a technician. Distance is everything. Awareness is everything. If you don't see it early, you're already late. Then he added something that sounded cold but was honest. If someone is close enough to stab you, you're already negotiating damage. The goal becomes minimizing, not winning. That line hits differently in a room full of guys who lived on confidence because it exposes the truth. Real violence is not glamorous, it's a dirty surprise. And Sinatra liked truth. He didn't need a superhero. He needed someone who understood reality. Big Anthony cleared his throat, trying to re-enter the conversation without looking like he was begging for his job. Frank, with respect, I still do what I do. I stop people before they get close.
Bruce didn't disagree. He didn't challenge him. He just added the missing piece. And you're good at it. Presence prevents problems, but when prevention fails, you need precision. That sentence saved Big Anthony's dignity while still making the point, and Sinatra noticed that. Because it meant Bruce wasn't trying to take someone's place, he was trying to build a system. Sinatra's eyes narrowed slightly. Can you train my guys? That was the real question. Not, can you beat my bodyguard? Not, are you a tough guy? Can you upgrade the machine that protects me? Bruce nodded. Yes. Just yes. And this is where the room split into two emotions at the same time, curiosity and insecurity. Because if Sinatra takes Bruce seriously, that changes the hierarchy. That means Big Anthony, the wall, the mountain, the final word backstage, has to accept that there's another kind of power in the room. Power that doesn't come from weight or fear. Power that comes from control. Sinatra's tone softened, almost like he was talking business now. How long would it take? Bruce gave a number that felt realistic, not a fantasy. Weeks for basics, months for real change. He explained training like building a body's habits, movement patterns, awareness, footwork, angles, reaction under pressure. And while he spoke, you could see Sinatra's brain calculating. If my security team moves better, they see earlier, they stay calm, they don't panic, then threats don't get close, then I stay alive. And in that era, that wasn't paranoia, that was planning. The Rat Pack crowd began to relax again, like the danger had turned back into conversation. Dean Martin made a comment, something casual like, "So you're telling me you can throw him around like that too?" People chuckled. Bruce didn't laugh hard. He smiled politely, and then he said something that was almost a warning. It's not about throwing, it's about not being there when the force arrives. That line made the room quiet again, because it's a simple idea, but once you understand it, it changes how you see fighting. It's not stronger versus weaker, it's aligned versus misaligned. Big Anthony stepped closer to Bruce now, not aggressively, but cautiously, like a man approaching a fire he didn't expect to be real. He spoke low, so only a few could hear. "What you did, that wasn't luck." Bruce shook his head. No, it was timing. Big Anthony swallowed, then admitted something that costs a big man a lot to admit. "I didn't feel you fight me. I felt like I was fighting myself." Bruce nodded once, like that was the whole lesson. Exactly. And that's the moment Big Anthony stopped seeing Bruce as an insult and started seeing him as a threat to his identity. Because if Bruce is right, then Big Anthony's entire worldview, size wins, was incomplete. And a man can handle pain easier than he can handle being wrong. Sinatra clapped once, not loud, just enough to end the moment and turn it into a conclusion. All right. He looked at Bruce again. Let's talk details. That was the verdict. Bruce didn't celebrate. He didn't ask for applause. He didn't look around the room to check who was impressed. He simply nodded and followed Sinatra into the next conversation, like this was normal work. But for everyone else, it wasn't normal, because they had just watched a myth get installed in real time. And here's the part most people miss. Bruce didn't disagree. He didn't challenge him. He just added the missing piece. And you're good at it. Presence prevents problems, but when prevention fails, you need precision. That sentence saved Big Anthony's dignity while still making the point, and Sinatra noticed that, because it meant Bruce wasn't trying to take someone's place, he was trying to build a system. Sinatra's eyes narrowed slightly. Can you train my guys? That was the real question. Not, can you beat my bodyguard? Not, are you a tough guy? Can you upgrade the machine that protects me? Bruce nodded. Yes. Just yes. And this is where the room split into two emotions at the same time, curiosity and insecurity. Because if Sinatra takes Bruce seriously, that changes the hierarchy. That means Big Anthony, the wall, the mountain, the final word backstage, has to accept that there's another kind of power in the room. Power that doesn't come from weight or fear. Power that comes from control. Sinatra's tone softened, almost like he was talking business now. How long would it take? Bruce gave a number that felt realistic, not a fantasy. Weeks for basics, months for real change. He explained training like building a body's habits, movement patterns, awareness, footwork, angles, reaction under pressure. And while he spoke, you could see Sinatra's brain calculating. If my security team moves better, they see earlier, they stay calm, they don't panic, then threats don't get close, then I stay alive. And in that era, that wasn't paranoia, that was planning. The Rat Pack crowd began to relax again, like the danger had turned back into conversation. Dean Martin made a comment, something casual like, "So you're telling me you can throw him around like that too?" People chuckled. Bruce didn't laugh hard. He smiled politely, and then he said something that was almost a warning. It's not about throwing, it's about not being there when the force arrives. That line made the room quiet again, because it's a simple idea, but once you understand it, it changes how you see fighting. It's not stronger versus weaker, it's aligned versus misaligned. Big Anthony stepped closer to Bruce now, not aggressively, but cautiously, like a man approaching a fire he didn't expect to be real. He spoke low, so only a few could hear. "What you did, that wasn't luck." Bruce shook his head. No, it was timing. Big Anthony swallowed, then admitted something that costs a big man a lot to admit. "I didn't feel you fight me. I felt like I was fighting myself." Bruce nodded once, like that was the whole lesson. Exactly. And that's the moment Big Anthony stopped seeing Bruce as an insult and started seeing him as a threat to his identity. Because if Bruce is right, then Big Anthony's entire worldview, size wins, was incomplete. And a man can handle pain easier than he can handle being wrong. Sinatra clapped once, not loud, just enough to end the moment and turn it into a conclusion. All right. He looked at Bruce again. Let's talk details. That was the verdict. Bruce didn't celebrate. He didn't ask for applause. He didn't look around the room to check who was impressed. He simply nodded and followed Sinatra into the next conversation, like this was normal work. But for everyone else, it wasn't normal, because they had just watched a myth get installed in real time. And here's the part most people miss.
This wasn't a story about Bruce proving he's the toughest. This was a story about Bruce proving that the world's most basic assumption, bigger wins, can fail in the worst moment, and that the person who understands that failure can protect you better than the person who depends on it. Big Anthony's job had always been intimidation. Bruce's value was something else, Bruce was the upgrade, and as the room slowly broke apart, people kept replaying it in their heads. Not the move, not the throw, the feeling. The moment the room realized violence has rules, and Bruce Lee knew the rules better than anyone there. Years later, people told this story like it was a simple flex. Sinatra's 350-pound bodyguard attacked Bruce, and Bruce crushed him. That version spreads because it's easy to understand. It's a movie headline: big versus small, David versus Goliath. A big man gets humbled, and the little man becomes a legend. But that's not why this story survives. This story survives because it doesn't just shock people, it teaches something people secretly want to be true. That the world is not locked, that you are not trapped inside the body you were born with, that power isn't only a genetic lottery, and Bruce Lee, more than almost any other figure of his era, represented that idea in real life. Because Bruce wasn't built like a heavyweight champion. He didn't have the frame that makes people step back before you even speak. He didn't look like the kind of person security teams were trained to fear. But he walked into rooms full of confident men, boxers, bodyguards, tough guys, street guys, and he didn't act like he was smaller than them. That's what made them uneasy. He behaved like the rules were different, and when someone tested him, the rules did become different. So the real meaning of this Backstage story isn't that Bruce beat a big guy, it's that Bruce exposed something bigger than the guy. He exposed a mental shortcut almost everyone lives by. If I'm bigger, I'm safer. If I'm heavier, I'm stronger. If I'm stronger, I win. That shortcut works until it doesn't. And the moment it fails violently, because strength without structure is a car with a powerful engine but no steering. It can destroy things, but it can also crash itself. That's what Bruce understood. He didn't fight power head-on, he redirected it. He didn't try to be the strongest man in the room, he tried to make your strength irrelevant. And that's a scarier kind of dominance. Now look at the Sinatra setting again. Why does this matter there? Because Sinatra's world was a world of image. Backstage was politics with cigarettes. Every person in that room had a role. Sinatra, the king, the entourage, the court, the security, the walls, the guests, the audience, the threats, the invisible pressure. Big Anthony's role was to be the final physical answer, the last step before violence. So when Bruce makes Big Anthony stumble, drop to a knee, slam past him into a wall, it isn't just a private moment, it's a crack in the system. Because security isn't only muscle, security is confidence. Security is the belief that nothing can touch the boss because the wall is too strong. And when the wall gets moved by someone lighter, everyone silently wonders, what else can move the wall? That's why the room reacted the way it did. That's why the laughter had shock in it. That's why Sinatra didn't treat it like a joke. Because Sinatra wasn't watching a fight. He was watching a system get tested. And in that test, Bruce wasn't the entertainer. Bruce was the engineer. That's the key. Bruce approached combat the way an engineer approaches a machine. He didn't ask, who's tougher? He asked, where does the system break? A big man's system breaks at balance, at angle, at overcommitment, at the moment he believes force is enough and stops thinking. And Bruce built his entire method around punishing that exact moment. That's what Jeet Kune Do really was beneath the marketing. Not a style, a philosophy of not being trapped by style, a willingness to delete habits that make you predictable. So in this story, when people say Bruce crushed the bodyguard, they picture a knockout. But in many retellings, there's no dramatic punch at all. The crush isn't blood, it's humiliation, it's gravity. It's the big man learning, in front of Sinatra, that size doesn't automatically grant control. And there's another reason this story survives. It's one of the clearest examples of Bruce being Bruce in a room that wasn't his world. This wasn't a dojo. This wasn't a film set where Bruce was choreographing the scene. This was someone else's kingdom, Sinatra's, where the rules are social power, reputation, and intimidation. Bruce walks into that kingdom and wins without playing the game their way.
He doesn't threaten, he doesn't bluff, he doesn't raise his voice. He simply demonstrates reality. That calmness is what made him dangerous to egos, because egos can survive insults, but egos struggle to survive evidence. Now think about Big Anthony's position. In most stories, he becomes the villain, the jealous big guy who tried to bully Bruce, but the truth is more interesting. Big Anthony was doing what security men do. He was testing risk. He was protecting Sinatra from a potential fraud. Because imagine if Sinatra hired a martial arts guy who wasn't real. That would be deadly.
So Big Anthony's skepticism makes sense. What he didn't expect was that the small man wasn't selling fantasy. He was selling physics, and physics doesn't care about pride. So in a strange way, Big Anthony is part of why this story is powerful. He represents the most believable form of doubt. Not internet doubt, not jealous fan doubt, professional doubt. The doubt of a man whose job is violence. When that man doubts you and then gets proven wrong, the legend becomes heavier. That's why the story grew, because it didn't sound like a fairy tale told by martial arts fans. It sounded like a story told by people who knew what real intimidation felt like. And it had the perfect ending: Sinatra's approval, Sinatra's smile, Sinatra treating Bruce like the real deal. Because if Sinatra, who lived surrounded by wolves, accepted Bruce, then Bruce must be something more than a stuntman. So over the years, people repeated it, and each repetition sharpened it. The bodyguard gets bigger. The outcome becomes more dramatic. The details get louder. That's how legends form. But the core stays the same. A big man believed he could solve the world with size. A small man showed him the world has angles. And everyone watching learned something they didn't want to admit out loud. A person with real control can be more dangerous than a person with real strength. Now here's the final layer. Why does this matter to you watching this today? Because the world still sells the same lie, that power is what you look like, that confidence should come from your frame, that the bigger personality, the louder voice, the stronger posture wins. Bruce Lee's whole life was a rebellion against that lie. He was proof that skill can rewrite perception, that discipline can rewrite biology, that intelligence can rewrite fear. And that's why this story stays alive, not because it's a cool backstage rumor, because it's a reminder. The rules you assume are permanent might only be assumptions. And the moment you meet someone who understands the hidden rules, your obvious advantage can turn into your biggest weakness. That's what happened backstage with Sinatra watching. A room built on image watched reality walk in, and reality looked like a lean man with calm eyes and no need to brag. That was Bruce Lee, not the myth, not the poster, the real thing.